Today, I'm looking forward to speak with two leaders who are shaping the future of training in mold assessment, remediation, and indoor environmental quality. So, we're going to look at the vision, the need, and the reasoning behind exploring new territory, what it could mean for all involved in the industry, and where you might ask, well, we're going to go north to Canada, and I'm going to visit with Mark Foster and Doug Hoffman. Gentlemen, welcome to the program. I do want to make a quick observation before we get into our discussion. I'm looking at your names there, Mark and Doug, and I think we either misspelled Mark's company name there or the organization, NORMIC, or maybe not. We'll find out about that in a moment. But let's get started and talk about advancement and better things coming in the industry and maybe some expansion as well. And Doug, I know people know NORMI. You've been on my program before, but for the two people who have never heard of NORMI, tell us. Tell us about NORMI, how it got started, and how it has grown.
Thank you so much, Jeff. So, NORMI, National Organization of Remediators and Microbial Inspectors, actually was founded in July of 2004, and we were created for the purpose of supporting training and certification for the Louisiana state licensing law, which was the first state in the union to actually have a licensing law for the mold industry. And of course, they licensed remediators. Then in January of 2005, we actually became a licensed training provider for the state of Texas. Since then, we've continued to build our relationship with the states, being a stakeholder in writing some of the licensing laws, or at least helping to write some of those licensing laws. And now we've been a national organization throughout the United States for 21 years. We just had a birthday this last summer, which is pretty cool. And so we're now in a place where we're doing training not only on mold, but really in the microbial world, Jeff. And you know as well as I do after 2020 that the mold world obviously was expanded in a lot of people's thinking to deal with more than just mold, but microbial contamination. We've always been kind of a leader in the training of this industry on the IAQ, indoor air quality world. And coming from building science, we've been able to kind of marry those two industries and talk with folks about how they can create cleaner, safer, healthier indoor environments.
Thank you, Doug. And it's always a pleasure to work with you. You guys are doing great things. Let's pivot over to Mark Foster. First of all, tell us about yourself, but I noticed there's an extra letter in the name there. I can't wait to hear
I'll,
why that is.
yeah, I'll I'll touch on that in a moment. So again, Mark Foster, out of Vancouver. We have a company called Foster First Solutions. It's about 25 years old, and several years ago, at the urging of a couple of American manufacturers, we took on the opportunity of importing and distributing professional products for remediators for cleaning up mold, and as well as recently products that clean up illicit drugs on surfaces and in the air. So a wide a wide customer base, everything from remediators to DIYers to the police to hospitals to shelters. So on this journey, every so often, and it seems more in the last couple of years, we hear from customers that are desperate to find people that can do this type of work, this cleanup work. Um, and there seems to be a number of cases where they're not finding either the people with the ability or with the evidence that there's some training been taken to be able to do this. So there's, it's a little insecure for people to, especially people that are dealing with allergies and high sensitivities to mold, or cleaning up meth homes. So about almost a year to the month, I started questioning or reaching out to insurance companies, home inspection companies, a couple of levels of government here in BC to find out what the accepted minimum standard was of training. And after many phone calls, including, if I didn't say home inspection companies, um, there was no common denominator or denominators. There was nothing. In a lot of cases, companies reached back to me and said, if you come across what you think is good training and possible certification, please get back in touch with us. So I continued down this path, and I met through manufacturers in the US. I met a couple of people that were in the training business. I met one gentleman, I think January of last year, and he knew Doug Hoffman and NORMI. So Doug and I started a conversation back in January.
There's some big news here. Doug, it's all yours. Tell us about it.
There is some big news here, and I'll just tell you the foundation for this really came from a long time ago. We found out, as I've said before, and you and I have kind of joked about this, Jeff, but I've always said the only people who need what we have are people who breathe. This mold training program is really kind of an international issue. I've done training in Seoul, Korea. I've done training in Toronto, just got back from Australia. We've had training in the UK, but we've never really had a structured partnership with anyone in those foreign countries. And one of the reasons why is because on the international scene, one of the things that frankly kind of concerned me is that I have enough dealing with the local licensing laws and dealing with the English language, that to think in terms of other languages and other customs and other regulations, it was just something I wanted to do and we wanted to do with NORMI, but something that we realized we had to have somebody that was stationed in that particular country that really understood that country and knew that mold was not a four-letter word, that there was actually you're in the middle of mold in Canada, MOULD. And so we needed somebody who really could be in touch with those regulations. And when I met Mark last year, it took us a long time, obviously a lot of discussion and talking, but I think I'm so happy that we have found him, being able to partner with him and establish essentially a chapter in Canada. And one of the things that excited me was Mark said from the very get-go, he said, I want to handle all provinces. And I said, I'm in. Let's make this work. And so to have somebody that I feel so comfortable with, trust, know he's going to protect what we've built, he's going to be able to take advantage of the credibility that we have in the States, but I think it take it to another level in a foreign country where they need desperately what I think we have to offer. I just can't tell you how excited I am about that and about being able to partner with Mark.
So what you're saying is NORMI is expanding to Canada.
That's it, in a
That's
word.
that's the news. And the C in Mark's name there, it says NORMIC. Is that C for chapter or Canada?
Canada.
Okay, I
C
know.
for Canada. Yes,
Can
sir.
I speak to that for a moment because
You can.
it has a dual purpose. It is NORMI of Canada, but the word, if you look it up, means generally valid or normal. So I thought, given the business, that's a good stamp.
Absolutely. Hey, Doug, how does the Canadian market align with NORMI's mission and standards as it is right now? And talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, I think what's interesting is, and I found this out in Australia, so I think there's quite a bit of similarity here, Jeff. Oftentimes, the countries have a tendency to follow what the United States has done, in particular, this particular topic. And I don't mean to be, to denigrate in any way Canada, but I think that they've not stayed up, as it were, with a lot of the newer technologies and a lot of the newer training. We're a little ahead of that. And so I think what we're able to bring to the table is a structure that we hope will become the structure for even some licensing and certification and training and maybe even apprentice programs and all of those sorts of things, because they're not quite there yet. And so we're hoping that we can bring to the table a standardized process where we can say, okay, if you're looking to standardize the process, here's something that's credible, that works in the States. Can we help? And that really is our position. It's not in any way to go go in and take over or be a big shot. It's to be able to go in and say, here's something that we know works in the States. Is there a way we can help you work it in Canada?
The fact, Doug, that you've been doing this for 25 years and building this and building it out so that there is a structure that instead of us just starting up right out of the blue here, we've got, you guys, excuse me, to lean on a little bit so that we can actually get a lot more people's attention and show that there's a validity to this that you can't find elsewhere.
Mhm. It's always good to have good partners and to help each other in the industry. We all know we have the same goals, different ways to get there, obviously. But Mark, I want to go to you and get your thoughts on what this means for the needs, the gaps, and opportunities of all those up in Canada doing this type of work and those who are impacted by mold and contamination. What can they look forward to as being solved by this NORMI expansion up to Canada?
We want to provide training for all those people that we talked about, from obviously the remediators for mold, but also the DIYers. I mean, the amount of time that's spent talking to somebody that comes in via our website or the phone, making sure that they're using PPE, making sure that they're staying safe and that they have the fundamentals of what's needed to be able to do the work safely. Because a lot of them frustrated will just take it on themselves, and that can be not always a good thing. So we hope to not only entertain those that Doug has been training in the US all these years, now in Canada, but we also want to put out some form of training or just information or education to people so that they're more informed and everybody's safer and healthier as a result.
Thank you, Mark. Doug, I want to talk about what you have built, you and your team and all the experts at NORMI, the programs and everything that you offer, certification. I know we've touched on it a bit, but talk about how that will work in Canada, and are there going to be any expanded opportunities because of a different market to be considered?
Yeah, that's a great question, Jeff. And we have talked about the multiple certifications that we have here in the States. So far, about 36 of them. We've got 36 certifications. Many of those will be applicable, of course, in Canada. But what's interesting is that as we're going through now and looking at our classes and finding which ones we can utilize there, I think there is an opportunity that's a little broader than we have here in the States. If I could talk about that for a second, I think what's really cool is initially I thought, well, we'll have to go through our classes and we'll definitely have to utilize find and replace and change all the 4-letter words of mold to 5-letter words for MOULD. But more than that, and the difference between, they're in the metric system and we aren't. So there's those kinds of changes that we have to make in our existing training. But I think more than that, what Mark has brought to the table, I think, is a really clear understanding of how we can help in ways that we have not been able to help in the States. For example, I think the drug cleanup class, there's a need for that here in the States. But in some ways, there's a more of an awareness in Canada. And so we're introducing a new certification, drug cleanup class that I think is going to be extremely helpful to them. We've talked a lot about First Nations, and First Nations is a really big deal in Canada. We don't have anything that's really similar to that in the United States, but this is the Indigenous people who actually, were the ones who were there originally in Canada, and they've got an entire community that needs what we have to offer because of their housing needs. We have not talked a lot about military, but as we've been doing that in the States of broadening our training for military and military families, we know that that's going to be something that's going to be an add-on to what we're doing in Canada. So I think there's going to be more and more and more opportunity. Obviously, we got to walk before we run. We're going to start with some of our basic classes to begin with when we launch in January. But the reality is that I think it's in some ways kind of unlimited as to what we're going to be able to do as we massage and move a lot of the things that we're doing to make that fit of what's happening in Canada.
And I'd like to add to your comments, Doug. Last week I attended the annual First Nations Housing Professional Association, which is comprised of housing managers from the 600 First Nations communities across Canada that come for education. There's a number of industry leaders as well as representation in types of housing, construction, mold remediation, cleanup, and things like that. But my point is that this organization is only 5 years old, and its grassroots were simply the fact that there was no organization when it came to funding that was coming into the communities. A lot of, if you do some research on First Nations in Canada, you'll find out in the last 10, 15 years, a lot of funding has come to First Nation communities in Canada because of the Truth and Reconciliation process, where the federal government determined that the First Nations were owed certain amounts of money. So money has been moving to those First Nations on a regular basis, and it's a question of properly managing it in conjunction with the issues that they're facing. So, First Nations communities are not limited to it. All communities are, but first, fentanyl and especially methamphetamines are a huge problem. When I was there last week, I was absolutely inundated with people wanting information on products that would clean it up, measure it after cleanup. It really did surprise me how much bigger it is than I thought it was. But anyway, I felt it was worth adding something to that because, to your point, Doug, it is a huge, huge problem. And I think the fact that we're now in a position to provide training and ongoing certification is well timed.
We have two websites. One is an American website, one is a Canadian website. It's training.normi.org, the one that most people are familiar with, training.normi.org. And there's a banner there that you click on, and it goes to normicanada.org. So that's the website for registration for the classes that are coming up in January in Vancouver. So there's a call to action for you. If you're looking for a class in Canada, if you're in the United States and you know people that you're working with in Canada, you want them trained so that they can speak the same language that you've been speaking in the United States, understanding the S520, the S500, the NORMI professional practices. All of that's about to explode in January on our launch, and that's going to be at normicanada.org.
We're using the equivalent of TV studios so that the classrooms are live, similar to Doug's NORMI, but we'll simulcast it so a lot of people can come in online. It's a huge, almost like an airplane hangar with green screens, so that the whole area is full of people online, as well as the presenters on the stage and sometimes the presenters that are zoomed in as well. So it should be a very entertaining education.
So I know we've talked for a few minutes about this, but this is really big news for those up there who need this training, this education, and the opportunities are huge, as mentioned by both of you. So we're talking about a January 2026 launch.
January 20th through the 22nd, that will be the CMA CMR class, our regular initial training, kind of our flagship class. That's the 20th through the 22nd. And then on the 23rd will be our illicit drug cleanup class. So it's 4 days of training, really going to be powerful. As Mark said, we've got a fantastic facility up there that's going to give us all kinds of fancy banners and lights. But the most important thing is that we're going to learn some stuff, and we're going to learn some stuff together.
And when can they sign up for this? Do they need to wait till January?
They can sign up right this moment.
They can go to normicanada.org, O-R-G.
Sounds like an easy way to find our way to Canada.
Yeah, thank you.
One last question, Doug. If someone's in the United States, would it make any sense for them to take that class that's up in Canada?
Well, as I said, the only difference is going to be the spelling of the word mold
We can
and
do
the
that. We can figure that out.
There's
yeah.
other words, Doug.
Well, there'll be
Not in
other
Doug's
words too
world.
then apparently.
Not in Doug's world. It's only
That's
mold.
true. That's a good point.
Yeah. Well, gentlemen, thank you so much for this. Good information. Look forward to seeing what happens next.